Thank you to all of our witnesses this morning. We will now begin a round of 5-minute questions. I ask my colleagues, please keep track of your clock and stay within the 5 minutes. We are quickly running out of resources to prepare for another COVID surge. I'm talking about vaccines that can keep us safe from the new COVID variants, more accurate tests, new treatments that work against new variants to prevent serious illness and death. Developing those products is essential, but it takes funding and it takes time. If we don't provide more funding now, the vaccines and treatments we need in the fall may not be available. I don't want to be in a situation again where our schools and child care centers are closed or our hospitals and healthcare workers are overwhelmed, and I want to make sure everyone who wants a vaccine gets one in the fall. So I want to ask each one of you individually this morning, why are additional investments in our COVID response needed now? And how will our ability to prepare for and respond to COVID change if we do not provide additional support? Dr. Lewinsky, I will begin with you.
Thank you, Chair Murray. We have numerous ongoing studies that will not be able to continue, studies that I believe the American people are interested in and need to see, including 2 nationwide seroprevalence studies that need to end in December 2022. These include the national burden and incidence of infections, immunity, and correlates of protection. We are unable to continue our long-term surveillance, and that includes comprehensive monitoring of post-COVID conditions. We will be unable to continue our mother-to-baby surveillance, and that includes mothers with COVID. We've learned a lot about how they impact on their babies, as well as the vaccine impact of pregnant women and on their babies. But we won't be able to do those studies for things like Paxlovid and other therapeutics, including monoclonal antibodies. And then finally, CDC will not be able to continue its global vaccine efforts, and in the future, its domestic vaccine efforts for support as well. Thank you.
Dr. Califf?
To me, the most important thing that will happen is people will die or be hospitalized or experience long COVID for days to months to maybe a lifetime unnecessarily if they don't have access to the latest vaccines and antivirals. Within the FDA, we have to keep track of all this and adapt to this rapidly changing virus and the environment that it's in. And I want to add one more component we haven't talked about, the supply chains of all of this. I've learned a lot about the food supply chain in the last few months, and it's not just infant formula. We have multiple areas of agricultural supply that are tenuous if workers get sick and can't tend. We all remember the early days of the pandemic in that regard.
Ms. Ocon?
Thank you. Without additional funds, we've already seen that we're going to be limited in our ability to maintain domestic manufacturing of tests. We've been able to support that over the last several months and keep it ramped up to meet the demand the American people have had for over-the-counter tests. We're now having to divert funds away from that. We're also not going to be able to expand our domestic manufacturing of mRNA vaccines. This was one of the things that we think is important for our current response and future preparedness. In addition, the Strategic National Stockpile is not going to be able to purchase domestically manufactured surgical gowns as we anticipated being able to do, and we'll struggle to be able to maintain the current PPE levels that I just walked through. We also are unable to invest in the research and advanced research and development for next generation vaccines and therapeutics.
Dr. Fauci?
Yes, Madam Chair. As you know, the role of the NIH is to do the basic clinical and translational research to develop the countermeasures that we have so successfully been part of that process to get us the vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics. As you mentioned in your opening statement, this virus is changing, and we need to keep up with it. In order to do that, we've got to do better with new vaccine platforms, such as nanoparticle vaccines. We cannot proceed with that unless we get additional funding. Importantly, we need to both prevent infection and transmission. We know that we cannot do that unless we get a highly effective mucosal or intranasal vaccine. We have a number of projects that will not be able to be funded unless we do get new resources to continue these funding. These are challenges that we have that I believe will be letting the American people down if we do not use our scientific capabilities to meet the next challenge of this ever-changing virus. Thank you.
Thank you. COVID-19 vaccines have done an incredible job keeping people from getting severely ill, and COVID treatments have, as we know, saved thousands of lives. However, we only have a limited number of treatments and vaccines, and they are produced by a small number of companies. I think everyone in this room is worried we are over-reliant on current products and not doing enough to get ahead with the next generation vaccines or treatments or tests, and I'm worried we're not investing in that research and development of products that we will need this winter. In our conversations, Dr. Fauci, Ms. O'Connell, it is clear that NIH and ASPR do not have sufficient resources to invest in that necessary research and development work. Dr. Fauci, you alluded to this a little bit, but talk about what you are doing to ensure this next generation research is the top priority for NIH, and what can NIH do to bring these products further along in the process with its existing funding?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two examples of what we're doing with regard to therapeutics is the antiviral program for pandemics, where we're using both development and discovery very similar to the paradigm that was used for the highly successful development and discovery of drugs for HIV, namely the antiviral drugs. We will absolutely need more resources to get that done effectively. In addition, we have just awarded 9 centers that are centers for, it's called AVID, the Antiviral Drug Discovery Centers. We have very good investigators throughout this country. We could fund many more, and that would hasten the capability that we have of developing new drugs. How we can continue to further that is to do what we've been doing all along, is to partner with our industrial partners to be able to do the fundamental basic concept development, and then together with barter, which we have been very successful with in that partnership, to continue to develop these new drugs as well as diagnostics.
Thank you. Senator Burr.
We'll turn to each of you.